Alright, so in this video, we're going to talk about touring on a Dyna versus touring on a Bagger. Let's check it out. What's going on, YouTube? FXDLSBROOKLYN is back in the building. And we are out here in beautiful Denver, Colorado. Really nice Airbnb that Bung Asphalt booked us to come into. Unfortunately, he's not with us. He had a whole deal of bike trouble trying to make it out here, so hopefully he catches up to us. We got the Scorpion is in the building. How you feeling? Good stuff. And we got, as always, the road captain in the building with his full face Simpson. Let's turn on his Lexan for him. There we go. You're good. And then, of course, we got the Dyna. And you might be looking at this Dyna and saying, dude, you're on a road trip? Where's your bags? Where's your sissy bar bag? That does not look like a Dyna that's on a road trip. Well, that's because all that stuff is inside there in the Airbnb. So your friend, FXDLSBROOKLYN, can really ride properly today with zero weight on this bike and really throw it around. Which in fact brings us to our topic today, which is something I've been thinking about as we've been crushing all these miles now that we are in Colorado. And a lot of people have actually asked me before, and that is, you know, what's the benefits of doing these types of trips on a Dyna versus doing these types of trips on a Bagger, like my companions here are on. We have, of course, the 2019 CVO Street Glide, and then my dad is on a 2016 Ultra Classic, right? So pretty good mix of bikes, pretty good mix of riding styles. So like most of my videos with an interesting topic, there's no easy answer to this topic. You know, at the end of the day, it depends on you, the rider, and what you're looking to get out of your ride. So I'll tell you why I enjoy touring on a Dyna, and then we'll also talk about the pros and cons of each, because there's definitely pros and cons of each. So I've been doing this since 2016. You know, we're talking 5 years of long bike trips on this bike, on this particular Dyna, right? It's not my first rodeo. You know, we've done it before. It's, at this point, it is pretty much as dialed in for touring as it could possibly be. The first reason why I've always loved touring on my Dyna is what I said before, which is the fact that when I do get to a destination where I'm going to be for a night or two, everything on this bike is completely detachable. So I can then strip it down and proceed to ride this bike the same way I would ride it back home. Now that being said, you know, having the T-bar bag and having the Leatherpros bag, I could still whip it into curves and everything like that. But getting that extra weight off definitely does make a difference. I even feel it now. We're not even doing like crazy riding, and I can feel having that weight off, and it just feels really nice. It's the original reason why I bought a Dyna, because I wanted something that was nimble and light and that could go fast. And now I am over halfway across the country on this bike, and I now have what I had back home. So to me, that's kind of the biggest reason why I love touring on a Dyna. And I mean, the other reason why I like doing it is for the same reason why I like doing these road trips in general, and that's the challenge. So most people who are doing these types of road trips are doing it on touring models, because that is what those are built to do. Harley-Davidson did not design the Dyna to go cross country. So I really like the additional challenge of doing it on a bike that is not designed to do it, right? But at the end of the day, I've ridden every touring model that Harley-Davidson has to offer at this point. And at the end of the day, for me, comfort-wise, I'm always going to be more comfortable on my Dyna, right? And that's just me. The Dyna is what's home for me, and that's me. But again, you know, we say that within the context of me weighing in at 145 pounds, not being on the taller side of things, you know, I'm 5'7", I'm not a tall guy. So for me, I could actually easily make, you know, a Dyna my touring model. And you know, I have a small enough frame where the Dyna feels to me like a touring model might feel to someone who's a little bit bigger. Whereas for me, when I hop on my FXR, for a bigger person, that's probably what a Dyna would feel like, right? That being said, that is another goal of mine. I definitely want to take my FXR cross country at some point. That would be a cool challenge to make happen. You know, but it's you know, it's a little bit ridiculous to do when I have this bike that is just so dialed in to do these trips. Look at that sidecar, that's cool. Tell you what, man, after the last 860-mile day, I wanted to be sitting in a sidecar. But yeah, so those are some big benefits for me personally of why I like to tour in a Dyna, and why, you know, maybe it's something you want to consider doing, right? But now there are drawbacks, right? So drawback number one is obviously I'm running a smaller tank. I'm on a 4.5 gallon tank. Up there, they're on 6 gallon tanks. So they are, by the time I'm on empty, they still have a quarter tank, right? So if anything, they're having to adjust their touring for me because I'm going to run out of gas. Now obviously there's ways to problem solve that. I could have brought a gas tank with me if we were like going for serious challenges, like a bunch of 1Ks and 1 days or whatever, but I didn't do that. So there are workarounds, right? But they definitely have the better fuel capacity that's going to allow them to lay down way more miles in an easier way than you're going to be able to do on a Dyna just from having to do less stops, right? The other thing is, again, like if you're going for multiple 1Ks in 1 days, you're trying to waste as little time as possible, right? So what that means is at the end of the day, when you get to the place where you are, you know, laying your head down to go to sleep, you want to unload your bike, and then when you get up in the morning, load it back up with as little time as possible. These guys are always waiting for me when it comes to loading and unloading a bike. You know, it's just going to take a while. You know, you're doing multiple straps, multiple bungee cords, you know, you got a lot going on to pack and unpack this bike with a Biltwell Xville 80. So in terms of just that, they don't have to do anything. They're literally opening tour packs and they're good. So in terms of that functionality, they definitely have me beat, you know? And again, if you are in a rush to pack and unpack, then that's something that matters, right? And again, you know, you're riding on a bigger frame. So it's a way bigger frame than a Dyna frame, so your seat's going to have more surface area. You're going to have more options and capacity for smoothness with your suspension. You know, you're definitely going to be having a more comfortable ride regardless of how big you are on those touring models. So that's a no-brainer. Obviously it's going to be more comfortable, right? So those are some of the benefits, right? So there's definitely pros and cons to each, you know. I think the times where, you know, these guys in the bike trips in years past have kind of felt the cons of that is where we get to a certain destination where we know that there's going to be some really good riding, say a bunch of twisties or what have you, and I'm able to strip this bike down, and even without stripping it down again, I could still 100% carve out corners and throw this bike into curves easily. But for them up there with the tour packs, they cannot do that easily. The weight's just not going to allow for it. So for them, you know, there's a lot of times where they've felt it in the past where, you know, they want to dip the bike into some curves more aggressively, but again, the weight of the tour pack is holding them back from doing so. And I don't know, it's definitely been a point in contention in years past. Like in 2019, I remember I would just get really frustrated because I'm like, you know, I'm behind these guys and we're going around curves that are some of the best curves I feel like I've ever found, but we're doing it at a speed that I consider is slow. And then eventually I would just get really frustrated, then I would just pass and go ahead, which was fine, you know, it didn't cause an issue or anything. But I kind of look back at that footage and I'm like, that kind of seems like a little disrespectful. And I don't know, it just didn't give me the right, I didn't get a good feeling from it when I went back over the footage. And it's like, you know what, like this trip, I'd rather just go around the curve slowly than to break up the pack and kind of be selfish and hit the curves at the speed I want to hit them. Because again, I don't know, I feel like for the road trip and the energy of the group, it just doesn't set a good precedent, you know. But again, Bung Asphalt is most likely going to join us at some point within the next couple days when he gets his bike dialed in. So I feel like if he's with us and it's two of us breaking off, then that's like a little bit more acceptable. But again, I don't think at this point, traveling with a trio, that I'm gonna feel good about passing these guys and breaking off just so that I can ride at the speeds that I want to ride. Especially if something happens, like if I do wreck doing that, I'm gonna feel really stupid and really bad, you know, having done something like that. So again, it's over these years, I'm always growing from these trips. I'm always reflecting on my own actions, and in 2019, that was just something that I could have done without doing. But it's a new trip, it's a new year, and I'm okay with doing these curves at slower speeds if it's going to make these guys comfortable, because I know that they're fine with doing that type of riding if their bike is dialed in to do so. But those, again, are some of the pros and cons that I've noticed doing both. If you are on a Dyna, and again, you're not like 7 feet tall, I encourage you to set it up and try touring on it, right? Why not? If you're on a Bagger, well, that's what that bike is designed to do, so get out there and get those miles and enjoy yourself. But yeah, in reflection, I think when we do get to our location in Sturgis, where we're going to be held up for a couple days, I think we are going to take the tour packs off of those Baggers ahead of us so that these guys can really enjoy some of the curves. But yeah, so in terms of a trip update, we're on day number 4. Again, this is Denver, Colorado. We are about roughly 2,000 miles into the trip. My bike has been performing very, very nicely. Shout out to a bike over at O'Toole's Harley Davidson for taking the time to get this bike dialed in. Unfortunately though, the Scorpion's bike ahead of us, if you saw a previous video, then you know that he blew a clutch 100 miles into the beginning of the trip. And as we parked yesterday, we noticed that he was leaking some hydraulic fluid, which is never a good thing. So we're actually on our way to a Harley Davidson right now to see if they could take a look at that so that we could ride with the peace of mind knowing that, you know, we're on a stretch of highway in the middle of nowhere. We're not going to blow out a clutch again. So this is part of the road trip. Things break. It's a normal thing. If you tap into your stay low state of mind and your PMA, then you could find enjoyment. Like these miles right now in this beautiful city I'm getting to see, even when the breakdowns happen. Because if things aren't breaking, you're probably not riding hard enough. You're probably not doing the trip justice. Alright, but that's all I got for this one. Just wanted to give you all a little update and cover that topic that a couple of you asked for. I might record a little bit more today. There are some rides up in the Rockies that were recommended to me by Stacy Wilt from Ride to Food, so we might check those out after getting some tacos. So yeah, pick it up there and cover some of that riding. But for now, we gotta get the CVO Scorpion back up and running with a peace of mind, so that's what we're gonna be working on today. Whether you're on a touring model or whether you're on a Dyna, stay safe out there and do your best to stay low. Practice a positive mental attitude. Listen to the bad brains through your Lexan G16 unit. And on that, FXDLS Brooklyn is out.